At some point in our lives, most of us have heard the saying, work smarter. It does not get much smarter than that arm and that hopper. That's what we're going to talk about this week. Stay tuned. Hey everyone, it is Josh with Premier Truck Sales and Rental. Thanks again for tuning back in this week. As I mentioned in the intro, we are talking about the arm and the hopper. Now, the way I brought that up too was we were always taught work smarter, not harder. And the best way to do that is to have this and that do most of the hard work for you. Now, there's a lot of great things that go in the design of this. This is not just a giant brute here. This is something that actually has, you guessed it, that little bit of finesse that you're going to need in order to get things done correctly. So we're going to start talking about the arm, we're going to go into the hopper, we're going to keep on rolling from there. When it comes to the arm, there is a lot to like, which means there's a lot to talk about. One of the first things is there's plastic out here, so that way you're not tearing up containers. Speaking of out there, with the arm fully extended, you can pick up 1,000 pounds. That is a huge amount, and that's more than what most cans are even rated for. So you've got that added security of knowing that all the way out, you should be able to pick up whatever's in there. Something else that you'll notice here on the fingers is we've got these upgraded rubber pieces. Now, there's a couple of advantages with these, and there's a couple of reasons why they're pointed in opposite directions. First off, the upgraded grippers actually do exactly that. They make sure you've got an upgraded grip. So when you're full length out with that can, you know you can grab it and squeeze it without crushing the can and have enough grip to pick it up. In the same sense, when you put that can in the hopper, you realize it's only the refuse going in the hopper and not the can, and that's why they're pointed two different directions. After all, once again, we talked about working smarter, not harder. So a simple upgrade here saves you a lot of trips in there. So as we move further back, all the hydraulics in here are well protected in a way. That way they're not exposed to some of the elements that are going to come out of some of these refuse containers. You can see these smaller hoses here at all these points. Those are part of that grease system that I mentioned before. This is all about making sure that you've got the longevity out of it. Grease is cheap. Heim joints, other pivot joints, they are not. Something else that you'll notice is all the hydraulic lines are wrapped. That way they're resistant to any sort of abrasion. On top of that, we've got a plastic wrap around this here. Everything's tied together. And if you notice here on our zip ties, we cut them all flush. Reaching and hitting a zip tie sometimes can be like putting your hand in barbed wire. We want to make sure that's never the case for anyone that may have to do any work to this. As we come back, the hoses, once again, they've all got their own brackets. They're all very neatly routed to make sure that there's no chafing, there's no abrasion. They stay out of the way. Once again, it's designed for that reliability in mind. Speaking of the tracks for the arm, one of the things that gives it its 1,000-pound capacity is the fact that it's basically a dual C-channel track. When you go all the way out to pick up a can, there's no torque load on it side to side really. There's no pivot points in this. It just telescopes straight out and straight back. Eliminating those torque points means that you're putting far less stress on the end parts of the arm and how it mounts itself. Keeping it all in line, making sure that you've got longevity once again. What does all that strength help give us? Well, it gives us speed. One of the things that this design allows is it allows the arm to come out very quickly, grab the can, pull it back. Because once again, we're not worried about any torque loads on it. That can mean you're down to a 7-second cycle time from the time the arm leaves the truck, grabs a can, tosses the refuse in the truck, puts the can back on the curb. I mean, it almost took me 7 seconds to say that. That is fast. Overall, that can make it so you're looking at about 120 cans per hour is what this is capable of. How do we know that? There's a cart counter on this too. Every time you close the fingers, it's counting a can for you. When you add up all that speed, what does that mean for you? Well, it means there's less time on the road for the driver, less fuel going in the tank, more money in your pocket. So we can't finish up with the arm until we talk about how that is connected to that. And really, that's where this really all comes together, because If that didn't work well with that, what's the point? This arm can be operated from either side of the truck. And one of the nice things with that is the arm, the way once again it comes out, it is only as wide as the fingers. You don't have to worry about things in front of or behind the arm. Now, the other part of that is as I mentioned before, it's electric over hydraulics, so there's no need for jerkiness or anything like that. It's a very smooth control, and it's regulated in terms of the speed. You can control the speed with the joystick. Now, just in case you get a little bit ham-fisted with those controls, there's actually a cushioning effect that happens at the end of the stroke of all these cylinders. So that way you're not banging things, you're able to have that soft cushioning. Now, there's two things about that is A, it means you're not gonna destroy other things, but B, it also means that you're not gonna be destroying the fittings and the linkage points on the truck. And that, once again, plays into that reliability and that longevity, keeping you out on the road as long as possible. So when the arm's done though, then what happens? Let's go up there. So I figured I'd give two camera angles, because why not? So there's one there, and I've got the drone flying up there too, because you guys are going to be able to see more from up top than you will down here at the bottom. But nonetheless, let's start at the front and kind of work our way to the back. Now, one of the things that we have here, this panel gives you access to some of the hydraulics and other items there. It also lets you see into the sump to see if you've got a bunch of water or anything like that collected down there. Once again, very easy to access. As you could hear there, it's heavy, which means durable. On this, I am actually standing on the packer right now. This can be set up to run on a continuous cycle where it's just going to go forward and backwards and forward and backwards. What that does for you is it makes sure that the hopper is always clear. You're never worried about grabbing a can and going to toss it in and this overflowing, because this is going to keep running and running for you. Now, sometimes people will put a lot of cardboard in there, which we all know takes up a ton of space, but it doesn't really weigh a lot. And all it takes is smashing it down a little bit. Some of the trucks will actually have a packer panel here that's on a hinge that will come down and compress that cardboard in that, so that way you can keep going without having to wait for the bottom packer to cycle 3 or 4 times to get that cardboard smashed down enough. One more thing as we move back here, we've got a heavy steel bracket. Now on this bracket, we've got two things. We've got our camera, so that way, we talked about the monitor inside before, you can see what's going on in the hopper. Is it full? Is the truck full? Where am I at? What do I need to do? It's that type of information that's always super helpful as you're running the truck, and having to just be able to look up your monitor instead of getting out of the truck to look back here is a huge help. Now, if it's at night, we also have a really bright LED flood type lamp back here. What that's going to do is that's going to help with making sure that we illuminate the whole thing. It's a floodlight. It's going to flood the hopper with light. That way there's not really any hot spots. You can see everything that's going on in the hopper. So A, you know it's full, and B, you know if there's any items in there that aren't supposed to be there. This is one of those things where it's simplicity, well thought out, and just durability. There's no reason to skimp here. It's make it strong, make it durable, make it functional. When you're running a truck like this, it doesn't get a whole lot better than that, does it? We've taken a pretty good dive into the Mack LR64R and the Labrie side loader here. And the overreaching theme to me that just stands out is the engineering that went into this. And most of that comes from experience. The tapered can, the fact that there's not really any welds in the can on the inside of it, the engine setup, the arm, how it's not affected really by torsional loads because of the way it's designed. All of these things come from experience. They come from good engineering. The other thing that comes from experience is something like the greaser system that we have on this, because those are those differences that we make to make sure that this truck is going to last and last and last. And that is where you can experience that Premier difference. All this being said, we've got more trucks, we've got more information, and we've got some pretty fun stuff in the plan to show how we do some of this. So do me a favor, make sure you're subscribed, hit that notifications bell. If you've got a question, leave it in the comments below. I will see you guys soon. Stay safe out there.